evidence and continuing this investigation. We are continuing our team coverage here in Memphis at Regional 1 Hospital in the medical district. Caitlin McCarthy is live there where several victims of the shooting from Collierville were sent. Caitlin, what have you learned about the victims so far?
Well, Yvonne, right now, Regional 1 can confirm with me 9 of those victims were brought here to the Trauma Center at Regional 1 in the Medical Center. 4 are in critical condition and 5 are non-critical condition when I spoke at the hospital just a few moments ago. But right now, outside Regional 1 is it's much more quiet than it was just an hour ago. Several, if not a dozen, ambulances were out here from Shelby County area first responders helping bring victims here. Right now, we know that 2 are dead and the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And again, the Collierville Police Department says the number of victims is likely to change, and they'll keep us updated as they learn more. Regional 1 has enacted their surge plan, and we're able to accommodate everyone in the trauma center, which means the trauma center is ready to take an influx of patients from an emergency, such as a mass shooting like this one, so everyone can be triaged and taken care of immediately. And again, Yvonne, we'll keep you all updated as we learn more about the victims and their status here at Regional 1. Yvonne, back to you.
Caitlin, thank you so much for that report. We are staying on top of this breaking news of that shooting that took place at a Collierville Kroger. Right now, let's send things over to Rudy Williams, who is also live in studio with me.
That's right, Yvonne. We are seeing a lot of statements coming in from our leaders for the state right now. One statement that we got already from Senator Bill Hagerty. He says, the tragic news out of Collierville, Tennessee that I'm closely monitoring is happening right now. I'm grateful to law enforcement and first responders for their heroic actions. Chrissy and I are praying for the victims and this Tennessee community that is hurting. My office is available to anyone needing assistance. Now, there are also other statements that are coming in right now. There was one earlier from Senator Marsha Blackburn. She says our office has been in contact with ATF, the TBI, and local authorities on the ground, and we are closely monitoring the situation in Collierville, and we are praying for all the victims there. And also there is this one from Senator Rumesh Akbari. She's from Memphis, Tennessee. She says, my heart aches for our families who are caught in yet another act of senseless gun violence. My family is praying for these victims and their caregivers, but it's going to take collective action from us all to heal the scars of this tragedy moving forward. No one should have to watch over their shoulder or work or picking up groceries. This cannot be the cost of living in a free society. So lots more coming in as this investigation continues out of Collierville tonight. We'll keep monitoring social media and everything else that we get into our newsroom. Yvonne?
Rudy, thank you so much. Definitely an outpouring of love and support online. Meteorologist Trevor Burchett is now with us on what he's seeing on social media as well.
Well, Yvonne, I could definitely tell you that traffic is a big concern. That's what a lot of people are talking about right now. And I don't know if we can get over to that traffic map. I don't know if that's exactly what we want to do right now. But I can tell you that Poplar Avenue is heavily impacted by the police presence right now at that Kroger. That Kroger, of course, on the northeastern corner of New Byhalia Road and Poplar Avenue. And you see the red on Poplar there going eastbound and westbound. That's going to give you some trouble if you're trying to get in and out of Collierville, and also Peterson Lake Road is slow going as well. That's an alternate route that a lot of folks are taking. So if you're trying to get around this scene, of course, we do not need you around there right now. The police, the fire, the EMS, they've all got jobs to do. They're going to be there for the next several hours. They're still working on getting folks away from the scene. Those employees and shoppers eventually will be allowed to leave and get in their car. So it's going to be a busy scene there for the next little bit. So just avoid Poplar and Byhalia if you can. Alternate routes going to include Bill Morris Parkway, 385. That'll get you eastbound and westbound toward downtown. You can also use I-269 to take you up toward Wolf River Road, and that will get you closer to Germantown. But again, for right now, avoid Poplar Avenue if you can. You're likely not going to be able to get through anywhere east of Houston Levee and to the west of Collierville Arlington Road. Again, that incident happening at Byhalia and Poplar right now. I don't know if we have anything from social media we can get to, but I will tell you this. We'll keep an eye on it. And of course, we'll keep an eye on the traffic and keep you updated as we know more, Yvonne.
Trevor, thank you so much. Definitely a big investigation that's unfolding right now, and we're learning more details as we speak. We're staying on top of this story, of course, and we're also taking a look at a lot of things on social media, from the outpouring of support that we're seeing from not only just our local leaders, our state leaders, but even people within the community. Some of them, I'm sure, that were there. People are sending us in video, a lot of video that we've seen this past couple of hours. This is a tag board that we've put together of some of those social media images. Let's see if we can enlarge a few of these to see what people are saying online. But again, a lot of it is an outpour of support and encouragement for those in Collierville. And it was a very devastating day. We've heard from Collierville Police Chief Dale about this tragedy. Take a look at what he had to say earlier today.
Our dispatch received a call of an active shooter occurring at the Kroger behind us. At 1:34, the first car arrived on the scene. Immediately, our cars began to flood the area to secure the scene. As we entered the building, there were multiple people shot. Our SWAT team, along with patrol officers and our command staff members, began the process of going aisle to aisle, room to room, clearing, bringing employees out that were in hiding, and helping the victims that were injured. At this time, we still have a couple of active scenes that we are working. The suspected shooter's vehicle is in the parking lot, and we are waiting on some additional equipment to get here to be able to safely check that vehicle, as well as some property that's on him. At this time, the shooter is deceased. We believe that's going to be from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. We have 13 victims. Our hearts go out to those that were injured. We do have one fatality, and our thoughts and prayers are with those family members.
Definitely a very tragic day. Police are describing it as horrific, and Chief Dale Lane even mentioned earlier today that this has been one of the most horrific things that has happened in the Collierville community. And we're actually hearing a lot from witnesses at the scene. We'll, of course, share that sound with you later on today, as well as people are just really trying to grasp exactly what happened. I'm sure a lot of them are shocked at what they saw, and just shocked that this happened in their own backyard. We're continuing this team coverage, and right now we're taking a look at the timeline of everything that we know so far, and we're also taking a look at a lot of the video that you've sent us as well. We know that dispatch received this call about this active shooter situation at about 1:30 today. Police arrived within 4 minutes to that Kroger, and they walked inside and saw the whole scene really unravel. They were finding people who worked at that Kroger, people who were just customers in several different locations, including some of which they say were in a freezer, just trying to dodge those bullets and get away from this active shooter situation. Again, we're staying on top of this as we know a little bit more about the shooter. We're learning more things as we speak right now. We do know that the shooter, they said, this person died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At this time, they believe that there is just one shooter. Again, no word on the weapon that this person used. We're also working to learn different information about whether or not this person was an employee at Kroger or if this person was just someone who came to the Kroger today. This is drone video that we have right now, just taking an overlook of that Kroger. You can see a lot of police still in the parking lot. And we were told today earlier by Chief Dale Lane that they're working several different scenes, including one that's specifically in the parking lot. The shooter's car is still there. He mentioned that the TBI and the FBI were en route. I'm sure they're probably in place by now. And they were going to continue that investigation with that car and the other different scenes that they're working at this time. Again, the only two that we're currently aware of is the shooter's car, which is in the Kroger parking lot, and the Kroger itself where the shooting happened. All right, we're going to send things over to Brad Broders, who has been on the ground talking to witnesses outside of that Kroger. He was also at that press conference today. Brad, what can you tell us that's new? All right, we're going to try and see if we can get Brad in just a few minutes. He's definitely been out there on the scene along with the rest of our crews. We've had a lot of team coverage there as well. All right, Brad is ready. We're going to go straight back to him.
I'm sorry, Yvonne. Yes, I'm here at the Kroger here in Collierville. This ongoing situation continues here. a little more than 3 hours after first responders were first called to this grocery store. You can see, if I can just pan over Elvis a little bit to the left, you can see still a lot of first responders on the scene. Yvonne, as you just mentioned, that's one of the big questions out there right now. We're going to get another update around 6:30 this evening, but one of the big things we're wondering right now about is, was this shooter a former Kroger worker, a current Kroger worker? That's part of the ongoing investigation. Not only is Collierville police here, Memphis police is here, the FBI. A lot of this area, more than 3 hours after this crime occurred, still a lot of this area around Poplar and New Byhalia Road, still a lot of crime tape, a lot of police cars out here. One of the big things that they're still going to work on is the shooter's car. They believe that they know which car it is in the parking lot, so they obviously have a lot of forensic details to sift through with that vehicle. That will be a key part of this ongoing investigation that's really just in its infancy right now, as those 12 people, a dozen people, are scattered throughout Memphis area hospitals, including Regional 1, including here in Collierville and elsewhere in Shelby County. It can't really be said enough, Yvonne, just about Chief Lane talking about this the most horrific crime, in his view, that's ever happened here in the town of Collierville. And you think about, again, if you saw this in the 3 o'clock hour, it has to be said again. I mean, we hear about active shootings throughout the country, in Colorado, in California, New York, etc. But on this afternoon, an active shooter situation has come to Tennessee, Shelby County, the Memphis area, and more than a dozen families are affected tonight. They're dealing with severe injuries. 2 people are dead. There's the shooter's family. There's a dozen others severely injured in hospitals across the county right now. So this is the beginning of a lengthy process, a lengthy emotional journey for many families, and a lengthy criminal investigation, Yvonne.
Absolutely right. This is just the beginning of what will be a long few days and weeks to come. Now, you were showing us earlier today a lot of video of Kroger employees that were gathered in the parking lot. Are they still there? Has that part of the scene changed at all?
A lot of that has changed, Yvonne. A lot of them, they were, if you don't mind panning off a little to the left, under that tree was where a lot of them were there earlier. Now, one Kroger worker had spoke to our Rebecca Butcher about an hour ago. That Kroger worker was talking to a lot of media, including Rebecca Butcher. I was sort of listening off to the side, but what I heard from that Kroger worker was she witnessed someone shot in the head, someone shot in the back. She was describing workers and customers running, trying to hide, running for safety, whether that was in an office, whether that was in a cooler. Just to give you just the chaos, the horror that was going on inside this store in the middle of the afternoon, a little more than 3 hours ago, just gives you a sense of the severity of what has happened and what so many in this community, so many in the Memphis area are still processing this hour and into the evening and into the days ahead. I mean, we spoke with a witness when we first arrived on scene about 2:30 or so this afternoon. She was saying she heard the pop, 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 and then ran into a freezer to hide. So, and this was an older woman, so I can only imagine what she's dealing with tonight in the aftermath of this for her personally. And there are so many other stories like that tonight. We don't know how many in the store, but an estimated guess between workers and employees, you would have to imagine it's in the dozens and dozens, if not potentially 100 or more. So that will be another detail that will come out, hopefully in the update we'll receive from police, probably in the 6:30 or so hour. Yvonne.
That one more question before we let you go also is that one thing that Chief Delaine was mentioning today was the resiliency of first responders. We still see there's a lot of police presence there, of course, at the Kroger. What is the mood that you can sense from them at this time?
It's been a tough day. I mean, I can from public information officers to first responders, firefighters, you can tell that there was even though the shooter, according to police, took his own life and the active shooting situation itself had concluded, there was still obviously a very intense emotional aftermath of that. And that's something, again, that these first responders in the Collierville area will continue to deal with in the days and days ahead, because this is something that's not going to go away anytime soon, Yvonne. And as Chief Lane was mentioning, the resilience of those first responders who ran into the store, saying none of those first responders hesitated at all, even though at the time it was unclear if the active shooter was still firing, if the active shooter was still alive, and what kind of weapon that active shooter had. Tragically, we know from other situations in other states how these are AK-47s, those kind of weapons that can shoot hundreds of bullets in seconds. And despite the unknown of what weapon was in the hands of that active shooter, those first responders went in there without hesitation. So Chief Dale Lane of Collierville Police honoring that heroism tonight.
A lot of brave men and women in Collierville, and we're thinking about them right now. Brad, thank you so much. Anchor Rudy Williams is now here with a look at what local officials have to say about this tragedy.
That's right, Yvonne. Lots of people have a lot to say about this very tragic situation that's happened in Collierville that is spread out into Shelby County and even to the state. Senator Marsha Blackburn took to Twitter saying, "Our office has been in contact with ATF, TBI, and local authorities on the ground, and we are closely monitoring the situation over in Collierville. We are praying for all of the victims, just as all of us are this evening." And then there was Senator Ramesh Agberry. She issued this statement on the shooting. She says, "My heart aches for our families who were caught in yet another act of senseless gun violence. My family is praying for these victims and their caregivers, but it's going to take collective action from us all to heal the scars of this tragedy moving forward. No one should have to watch over their shoulder at work or picking up groceries. This cannot be the cost of living in a free society." As you look at scenes there, you see some of those people that were there shopping. You see some of those employees, as Brad just told us a little while ago, who will be giving their accounts of what happened today. Brad talked a lot about the lengthy process that this would be, stretching on into the next several days and even weeks. And that's because police will have to talk with each one of those people who were involved to get their eyewitness account. They'll also be looking at surveillance video within the store, as you can imagine, to find out exactly what went down in that Collierville Kroger on this day. Once again, a very chaotic, a very tragic, and also for all involved, a very traumatic situation that we will continue to monitor. We'll continue to watch social media as other statements and comments come in. And also, Yvonne, as you've also mentioned, the outpouring of support from our community for those people involved there today.
Rudy, thank you so much. We sure need it right now. And we continue our team coverage in Collierville, where Rebecca Butcher is also live. She spoke with an eyewitness. Rebecca, what did that person have to say?
As well as you can imagine, this has truly been a horrific day for the shoppers and the employees of this Collierville Kroger on New Byhalia Road. When I pulled up to the scene this afternoon, I immediately spotted two men who were embracing one another and praying with one another to get themselves through this tragedy. Now also, Kroger employees were gathered together outside of the Kroger on the parking lot to support one another. Witnesses described the sounds of gunfire as rapid popping noises, and one woman who's worked here for over 30 years told me her account on today's mass shooting. And people here always have been speaking
in the deli, and I heard some gunshots. We thought it was balloons popping. So when it kept on going, we said, no, there's gunshots. So I ran. Some of my co-workers and some of the customers came, and we ran, and I kept on saying, go, go, go. So we ran to the back of the store by the meat department, and there's some double doors that'll take you to our break room. So we ran all the way back, and there's some more customers that was coming in, but they was coming in through the meat department, through that back part. And I told them, you all come on, let's hurry. And then all of a sudden, I went through the receiving department, and there's another door that takes you outside the receiving department. And there's another opening where you can go in and hide through an incinerator. And here he comes right behind us, starts shooting. And he kept on shooting. He shot one of my coworkers in the head. and then shot one of the customers in the stomach.
Stand by.
Yeah, also we spoke with a lot of people here, and really the tone, of course, is sad. You know, it's a heavy feeling here, but we did see a pastor who was here speaking with people, offering his condolences as well as his support to the many victims as well as their families. And our thoughts are certainly with, our thoughts and our prayers are certainly with the victims as well as their loved ones. Yvonne?
Becca, thank you so much for that report. Our team coverage continues. We have lots of crews on the ground trying to help you navigate what unfolded here. Right now, we're going to go ahead and go up to Regional 1 Hospital in the medical district where Caitlin McCarthy is there, where several of the victims of the shooting in Collierville were sent. Caitlin, what have you learned?
Well, Yvonne, that's right. Regional 1 can't confirm that they have received 9 of the victims. 4 are in critical condition right now. 5 are in none. I have reached out to the hospitals. I've heard word that a 3rd victim has died. We do not have that confirmed yet, but we are working to get that confirmed. Right now, outside the trauma center is much quieter than it was just an hour ago. Right now, we know 2 are dead, and the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And we are also working to confirm if the shooter was brought here for treatment. Again, the Collierville Police Department says the number of victims is likely to change, and they'll keep us updated. Regional 1 has enacted their search plan, and we're able to accommodate everyone in the trauma center, which means the trauma center is ready to take an influx of patients from an emergency, such as a mass shooting like this one, so everyone can be triaged and taken care of immediately. And Yvonne, again, we'll be here at Regional 1 throughout the evening, learning how victims are doing and any other fatalities. Yvonne, back to you.
Caitlin, another question before we let you go. There was a heavy police presence there at the hospital as well. Is that still the case?
Well, Yvonne, earlier, just about 2 hours ago, there were several dozen MPD cars out here. Right now, there's no more MPD cars. There were several other ambulances out here, but right now the scene is much quieter than it was just an hour ago.
Caitlin, thank you so much. Now we're going to send things over to anchor Rudy Williams, who has a new statement from Congressman Cohen.
That's right, Yvonne. We're hearing that Congressman Steve Cohen is monitoring the situation from D.C. In a statement, he said this: the shooting in Collierville today is another horrific incident caused by someone who undoubtedly had mental health issues and a firearm. This is a deadly combination. My thoughts are with the victims and their families, and with all in Collierville and the greater Memphis community. And also, Senator Marsha Blackburn took to Twitter. She says our office has been in contact with ATF, TBI, and local authorities on the ground there, and we are closely monitoring the situation in Collierville. We are praying for all of the victims there. All right. We want to send things back over to Trevor.
Yeah, Rudy, we have been keeping a close eye on social media. Obviously, people taking to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram to obviously post their condolences, but also to post videos of what the scene was like around the region. Take a look at this. This is from just a few minutes after the original police call was made. You see helicopters moving in, and this person reporting multiple injuries with that active shooter. Of course, that shooter is no longer active right now. We understand he did take his own life. If we've got some more videos that we have just really showing the chaos around the area as this happened, we had, obviously, as I think Brad mentioned, likely hundreds of people inside the store at the time that this happened. And there you see ambulances pulling away, a large police presence there. Obviously, if you're familiar with this area, Rudy, you mentioned this earlier, there's lots of other shops in that area. You've got the antique mall there. You've got Walmart just down the street. You've got all of that little strip mall that's right in front of the Kroger. So several businesses impacted by this. And then here you see those people wishing their condolences and praying for the people impacted by this horrific and senseless tragedy. Let's go back out live now to Brad Broders. He's in the parking lot of that Kroger store. Brad, what new can you tell us?
Well, Trevor, just more questions to be answered late this afternoon into the evening. If you're just joining us, we're expecting another media update around 6:30. But here's what we know at this hour. According to Collierville Police Chief Dale Lane, 12 people are injured at Memphis area hospitals. 2 people are dead, 1 victim, and the active shooter, according to police, shot himself or herself. We believe it's a man. We're still working to confirm that. This is what we know at this hour. The call came in about 1:30. Law enforcement came into this Kroger and they immediately came into contact with those who were shot. Customers trying to hide. The chief said they went aisle by aisle trying to get folks to safety, treat those who were shot and injured. Chief Dale Lane said that he found people, employees, hiding in freezers, hiding in offices, anything they could do to get away from that active shooter. If you're just joining us, Chief Dale Lane of the Collierville Police Department described this day as the most horrific in the history of the town of Collierville. Let me repeat that. He said this is the most horrific day in the town of Collierville, to give you some broader perspective of what this community in Shelby County is dealing with this hour. We've seen dozens of Kroger employees be comforted. We've even seen law enforcement comfort each other, because this is a situation that few police departments ever deal with. But as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, active shootings continue to happen across this country, and you never know what community an active shooting can happen in. This afternoon, on the 23rd of September, an active shooting occurred in the Memphis area, the town of Collierville, and now a lengthy criminal investigation begins. A lengthy emotional journey begins for dozens of affected families. This town, law enforcement, all of them grappling with what happened today. And the victims are scattered across the Memphis area in hospitals, dealing with the aftermath, being treated. We don't know exactly how many people were in the store, as Trevor just alluded to, but you can only presume early afternoon on a Thursday, between workers and customers, you're talking dozens and dozens, maybe over 100. We're working to sort that out. Some key points that we are still working to confirm. One major one: did this shooter work at this Kroger? Was he currently working at this Kroger? What was the shooter's motive? We do know that law enforcement has the vehicle they believe the shooter drove to this parking lot in. That will obviously be a key component of this lengthy investigation that is just in its infancy at this hour as we speak. Chief Dale Lane just discussing the resiliency of all local law enforcement going into this store without hesitation at a moment where it was unclear whether the active shooter was still firing, what type of weapon that active shooter possessed. So many unknowns as they bravely ran into that store to assist those who were shot, to help people get out into safety. So much of an active situation. Bravery today. Chief Dale Lane talking about the resiliency, but also acknowledging the horrific nature, the loss of life, the injuries that this community is dealing with this hour. Back to you all.
Brad, thank you so much. Definitely a community that's dealing with a lot. There's still a lot of unanswered questions, and the impact of this is wide and reaching. It also impacted Collierville High School earlier today. The school went on lockdown. That lockdown was lifted before dismissal, and it was locked down for several minutes. But for a brief time today, students say that they didn't even know what to think when they heard this news. Definitely a lot to process. We also have been receiving a lot of video from you all at home. This is drone video that we have from a viewer, just an overlook of the Kroger and everything that unfolded there. You can see there's lots of police on the ground. There's lots of cars in the parking lot as well. It's a lot to process. It really, really is. It's a lot to process, and a lot of emotions that people are feeling right now to know and to think that something this tragic, this senseless, happened in their own backyard. It's definitely a very hard day for a lot of us. Rudy Williams was out on the scene also today and spoke with some people as well. Rudy, what can you tell us?
Well, Yvonne, we did speak with some people that were there. We spoke with a young man who works at a store, because that's a very commercial area that we're talking about, that we just saw that drone video of around that Kroger store. As Trevor said earlier, there are restaurants there. This is shortly after the lunch hour, so that's quite a busy area around that Kroger store. And for this tragic situation to happen, it had to have presented a very chaotic scene there, and we see the aftermath. in the video that we're showing you right now. I want to stop here once again and say that our hearts go out to those families. It goes out to this community. We are all a part of this community. We all live together. We all work together. We all play together. So if something like this happens within a place that's so frequented by many of us, and could have been any of us or a family member or a friend, as people that I've talked to today, we are all definitely impacted by such a thing. So as we'll continue to see through the evening and going on through the days before, we will see the outpouring of support that the Mid-South is known for, standing by one another, in situations like this. We see here that this investigation is going to take a while because there's so much that we don't know. As Brad said just a moment ago, there will be eyewitness accounts that will be given to investigators that will shed more light into what happened there. Was that an employee of the store? Was this a random shooting? Was there a target? All those things will be answered. Dale Lane is the chief of police there. I can say once again, in my years of working with Dale Lane, I cannot remember a time where I've seen him as shaken and concerned as he did in the interview during that press conference earlier today that we showed you and will continue to show you as we go on through the evening. I am in contact with local law enforcement there. The TBI, of course, has not been asked for assistance in this case as of yet. So Collierville Police will be working this investigation as far as we know at this moment in time. We've got crews that are also at one of the area hospitals where some of those victims were taken and will be treated. We know that more than a dozen people were shot there this evening, and we do know from what we've been told by police that the suspected shooter took his life as well, but all of that stuff will be confirmed as we continue to go further, Yvonne.
Rudy, you're absolutely right. There's still a lot to cover, a lot of answers that we're working to get you and that we'll learn as this investigation continues. Our Rebecca Butcher is also live with our team coverage. She spoke with an eyewitness. Rebecca, what did that person have to say?
Guys, as you can imagine, it is an emotional, heavy scene here at the Kroger on New Byhalia Road here in the Collierville area. We got word of this from police is happening around 1:30. Of course, we were right on it, sending multiple crews to the scene also where Caleb McCarthy is and the Regional 1 area. But here at the actual scene, when I first arrived, I saw two men holding each other's shoulders. Really, it seemed like they were in prayer mode to get one another through this tragedy. We also saw a pastor who had been here on scene. One of our colleagues said he had come from next door to provide a prayer, a hug, anything to get these people through this situation, this mass shooting. Now, you might have heard Brad tell you earlier in this newscast about how 13 people were involved, not including the shooter. One of those people was shot and killed, 12 others injured. I spoke with a woman who says she's worked here for 32 years. So if you can imagine that, she knows the people, the faces that she greets every day. She was at the cash register. She told us in a media gaggle about how, you know, this is something you would never expect, especially in Collierville. She also told us how a group of people, 3 to 5 people were with her, and they were trying to get to safety towards the back of the store, this Kroger store you see behind me. She said that she brutally saw a person, one of her co-workers, an employee here at Kroger, get shot in the head, as well as a customer that she was nearby get shot in the stomach. She also said somebody might have been grazed near her somewhere on the back. She heard a woman say, "I was shot in the back, I was shot in the back," but she didn't see a lot of blood, so she thinks that she might have been grazed. So our thoughts are definitely with the family, the victims, people who are at Regional 1 recovering. We did hear from the police chief, Chief Lane, just say about how in his over 30 years experience in law enforcement, he hasn't seen anything like this. He said this is something that is horrifically historic for the town of Collierville. As you can imagine, this is making national headlines right now. ABC is covering this, everyone, but we want to, of course, speak with the eyewitnesses and have you hear from the actual people who experienced this. So we'll have more on that coming at 6 o'clock, but the tone here, I can tell you guys, is definitely heavy. There was a school nearby that was on lockdown. It's since been lifted, but our thoughts, our prayers, definitely with all the people involved.
Thank you so much for that report. We're going to send things over to Rudy Williams. He has a couple of new statements that he wants to share with you all as well.
That's right, Yvonne, and we're going to start right here with the city of Germantown. The city of Germantown says they're deeply saddened by the tragic event that occurred this afternoon in Collierville. We want to express our deepest sympathies to the victims, families, and the friends there who were impacted by this senseless act of violence. Germantown says that they stand with their neighbors over in Collierville. We also got in just a little while ago a statement from the minority leader, Karen Camper, in the State House here in Tennessee. She says, "My heart goes out to the victims and their families of the horrible mass shooting in Collierville. This is a scene that continues to play out across the country and now comes to our own backyard. Now, while there will be time in the future for reasoned discussion about the cause of this tragedy, this is not the time. This is a time for us to come together throughout reflection and prayer for all the victims and their families." And we see that there are a lot of people that are impacted by this. We see that there are a lot of people who are sending words of comfort and care as we look at this tragic scene today. And as we've talked to people, we've talked to some eyewitnesses that you've heard video from earlier. As they are shaken, we are shaken by this as well. But we're going to continue to bring you as much coverage and the best coverage that we can as we continue to deal through this situation right now. Right, Yvonne?
That's absolutely right. And some themes just keep ringing true: unity, resiliency, a lot of which the city of Collierville has and will need in the days and the weeks to come. Let's walk you through a timeline of everything that we know so far that we got from Chief Dale Lane earlier today. He told us that at 1:30 p.m., dispatch received a call about this active shooter situation, and police arrived within 4 minutes. They were there. Inside of that Kroger, they saw the tragedy. They found at least 13 victims. 2 people are dead, including the shooter, who they believe at preliminary investigations all point that this shooter turned the gun on himself, had a self-inflicted gunshot wound. As of right now, there's no word on a lot of things. We've been talking about that. There's no word on what kind of weapon this person used, if this person was or was not a person who worked at this Kroger, or if this was just someone who was a customer. We are waiting to get an update from police on everything that's happened today. In just about an hour or so, we should know a little bit more. But again, a very tragic day. This is video from the scene that we've been seeing all morning. And there's a lot of people there responding and helping at this moment. You have the TBI, you have the FBI, you have Collierville Police, you have Shelby County deputies, law enforcement, first responders are all banding together to really brace what's to come, which is more information, more details, and hopefully a lot of hope and healing for this community. Now, we're staying on top of this breaking news of the shooting that took place at Collierville at this Kroger. Let's take a live look of this map of where everything is, or really, let's go to Brad Broders, who is live on the scene with an update.
Yvonne, I do have a significant update I just received the last couple of minutes from a source on Facebook. It is a person who says he's the son of one of those victims who died earlier today. I'm going to read a little bit of this Facebook post. Out of privacy, I'm not going to give this person's name, but I'm just going to read you some of the post. I spoke with a trauma surgery. I must inform you with a heavy heart that my mother has died from her wounds. She was shot directly in the chest. EMTs attempted CPR at the hospital. They tried to save her at the hospital, but to no avail. We will continue to update family and friends as it becomes available. This person says he cannot believe he's typing this, but his mother was one of the victims today at that shooting at the Collierville in Kroger. So that just gives you an example of we're starting to get, as the day and afternoon turns into evening, more information. We're getting a sense more of the human emotional toll this is taking on more than a dozen family, dozens of family in the Collierville area. Also, some breaking news I can report. I'm told a source within the Collierville Police Department says that the shooter was an employee at the Kroger who had just been fired. That is not confirmed. We are waiting to have that confirmed at the 6:30 news conference, but that is a source within Collierville Police who can report that the shooter was an employee at the Kroger who had just recently been fired. We will hear more information at a news conference around 6:30. Chief Dale Lane, again, was just discussing the resilience of these law enforcement officers who, a little after 1:30 this afternoon, ran into this Kroger, not knowing what kind of weapon that active shooter had, not knowing the situation, how many people were shot, how many people could potentially still have been shot as first responders went into that Kroger. But again, we're getting more information at this hour with one of the people who we told has died from the shooting. We do know at this hour 2 people were killed. We are told 1 person who was inside the store was killed, and we are told that the shooter turned the gun on him or herself and also died. And we also know that 12 people are hospitalized in local hospitals in the Memphis area. We are hoping to get more information in the next hour. But again, this community, this region, grappling with another active shooting in the United States, this time happening in the Mid-South in Shelby County, Tennessee. The investigation in its infancy, but it's still taking a toll on a lot of law enforcement, a lot of citizens tonight in this community. It can't be said enough. I want to reiterate it if you're just joining us. Chief Dale Lane of the Collierville Police Department said this is the most horrific day in the town of Collierville's history. Rudy, as you alluded to a few minutes ago, I've worked in this market several years myself. I know Dale Lane to be a very kind, a gracious man, and I agree with Rudy's assessment. I've never seen Dale Lane, the now chief of Collierville Police, so shaken up. He's worked in various roles in Shelby County law enforcement in his career here. Now the Collierville Police Chief for a year or so, and you can certainly tell the weight that has taken on him. But again, a source within the Collierville Police Department has told us that this shooter was an employee who was recently fired. Again, we are going to learn more at a news conference around 6:30. We are also, again, to recap, getting word from one of the victims' sons who confirms that his mother was one of the 2 people killed this afternoon, again saying that they tried giving her CPR, but to no avail. So we're going to continue to monitor this team coverage, but for now, reporting live in Collierville, I'll send it back to the studio.
Brad, that is a significant update. Thank you so much for that. I do want to ask you a quick question before you go. Can you talk to us a little bit about the victims, the people that you've talked to, the witnesses? What else are they saying as well?
Rebecca, I was listening into the witness that Rebecca was speaking with a little while ago. My photographer and I caught up with another woman when we first arrived on the scene, who is an older woman, still very, very shaken up. She said that she was in the store, heard pop, 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 ran to the freezer for safety. Presumably in the freezer, several minutes, she was still cold, even though she had stepped outside. And as Chief Dale Lane talked about earlier, many employees, customers, ran to offices, hid in freezers for safety. That just gives you a sense of the horror that was going on inside the store earlier this afternoon, and people getting shot. Rebecca's witness said she had spoken with, and I heard a little bit. I heard her say, I saw someone shot in the head. I saw someone shot in the back. And so to give you a little bit of the scene, law enforcement came in here earlier this afternoon not knowing if the shooter was still firing, still injuring, still potentially killing others. And these law enforcement members went in aisle by aisle, making sure people could get out to safety, making sure anyone who was hiding in freezers could get out, hiding in offices, just offering comfort and calm after moments of horror, moments of tragedy, moments of bloodshed. That's what we're dealing with this hour. This is an investigation of a shooting at a scale few in this region have ever seen before. Again, Chief Dale Lane of the Collierville Police Department, I have to reiterate this. He says this is the most horrific day for the town of Collierville. That gives you a sense of the gravity of what investigators are dealing with. It gives you a sense of the gravity those who live in Collierville, live in this region, are just beginning to deal with, because this will be a long investigation and this will be a long journey emotionally and spiritually for a lot of people in this region as this investigation continues. Yvonne.
It is a heavy and heartbreaking day. Brad Broders, thank you so much. Trevor Burchett is here with us now on what he's seeing on social media.
Yeah, Yvonne, heavy a word you could use to describe it. It's just kind of a gut punch kind of feeling, you know, being so close to home. And that's really the reaction a lot of folks are, putting out there on social media, not only from here in the Memphis metro area, but from really around the country and even around the world. And we want to take a look at some of those responses right now and some of the things that we've seen on social media. There you see, this is from when things were first starting to happen. You see ambulances driving away from the scene, very active police investigation happening there, just getting underway. And you see there, as we confirmed earlier, the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and at least one other person in the store was also killed. There you see some folks gathering just outside of the store. Again, this is the Kroger store on New Byhalia Road at Poplar Avenue, just the closest you can be to downtown Collierville. So this is close to home for many of us, not only in Collierville, but in Memphis. And as you see there, someone tweeting out, praying for the people at the Collierville Kroger. If we have just a second, I'd like to get over to traffic because we've still got issues on Poplar Avenue. As you can imagine, it is an active scene continuing, and it likely will be after sunset tonight as well. So if you're trying to use Poplar Avenue to go anywhere right now, I would advise against that. From Bray Station Road and Shea Road all the way over to Peterson Lake and even into Center Street toward downtown Collierville, that whole stretch of Poplar is pretty bottlenecked right now. And then New Byhalia northbound and southbound are also impacted due to that police investigation. So if you're trying to go westbound, you could use Bill Morris Parkway 385, and you could also use Wolf River Road as opposed to Poplar, because you're not going to be able to get through on Poplar. Same story for coming eastbound. If you normally come downtown, if you're leaving work right now and you're headed to the suburbs to get home, and you normally take Poplar, you're not going to be able to more than likely today, at least for the next few hours. So think Shelby Drive, Bill Morris Parkway, and then Wolf River and Germantown Parkway to kind of get you into the northern portion of Collierville, because again, you're not going to be able to use Poplar Avenue as this investigation is continuing. You see the traffic slow going, you see the red there. Even Peterson Lake Road, that's a residential road, more of a residential road that takes you toward the houses and developments on the north side of Collierville. It's slow going right now because so many people are having to use that as a detour. So bottom line is, avoid this area if you can. I'll keep an eye on traffic and I'll keep an eye on social media and keep you updated with the latest information we have. Yvonne.
Trevor, thank you so much. Just into our newsroom, we have a statement from Kroger, and it reads, "We are deeply saddened by the incident that occurred at our Kroger store located on New Byhalia Road. The entire Kroger family offers our thoughts, prayers, and support to the individuals and families of the victims during this difficult time. We are cooperating with local law enforcement who have secured the store and the parking lot. The store will remain closed while the police investigation continues, and we will have initiated counseling services for our associates." Here are 3 things to know right now. 12 people were injured and another person was killed in the shooting. Police say the suspected shooter is also dead, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Regional 1 officials tell us that they have 9 patients from the shooting. 4 are in critical condition. 5 are in non-critical condition. We're going to send things over to anchor Rudy Williams, who's been keeping an eye on social media, also receiving statements from local and state leaders.
That's right, Yvonne. We are continuing to receive those into the newsroom, and we're going to recap some of the ones that we've already gotten. For instance, from Congressman Steve Cohen, whose office has been monitoring the situation. He's in Washington, D.C., of course, but he says the shooting in Collierville today is another horrific incident caused by someone who undoubtedly had mental health issues and a firearm. This is a deadly combination. My thoughts are with the victims and their families and with all in Collierville and the greater Memphis community. And State Senator Rumesh Akbari from right here in Memphis issued this statement on the shooting. She says, "My heart aches for our families who were caught in yet another act of senseless gun violence." She says, "My family is praying for these victims and their caregivers, but it's going to take collective action from us all to heal the scars of this tragedy moving forward. No one should have to watch over their shoulder at work or picking up groceries. This cannot be the cost of living in a free society." And the latest that we've received from Senator Marsha Blackburn, she took to Twitter. She said, "Our office has been in contact with ATF, TBI, and local authorities on the ground, and we're closely monitoring the situation in Collierville. We are praying for all of the victims. And once again, we can't say it enough, a horrific, a tragic situation over in Collierville today. We're going to continue to bring you as much as we can. We've got images, as you've already seen, of the aftermath of that shooting that occurred around 1:30 today. What we know so far, as Yvonne has already said, that there were more than a dozen people shot there, and a very lengthy investigation continues to go on. People are in very, very traumatic places at this point in time. There is another shot of the scene in Collierville at New Byhalia Road and Poplar at the Kroger grocery store there. Once again, this occurred at 1:30 today. A very busy time in that area, lots of people around. And whether you were inside of that store or outside around it, you had to have known or taken notice that something unusual was occurring in Collierville on today. We'll all be faced with that in the days to come. Yvonne?
Rudy, you're absolutely right. And really, I want to stay with you for just a moment here. You know, I'm pretty new to the area. That's not a secret. But you've been here for a while. And this is definitely an unusual day, a very devastating day. Talk to me a little bit about the community in which this has happened to.
Yeah, well, you know, as has been said before, this is a very resilient community. We see that the Mid-South, Memphis, Shelby County always steps up in times of need. We see it with St. Jude Children's Hospital. We see it with other efforts that are afoot to aid our neighbors and to aid our loved ones in our community. And this will no doubt be another one of those situations, but the circumstances surrounding this, I must say, Yvonne, are uncharacteristic of anything that I have seen on such a scale before in this area. I mean, you just think about it. All of us at some point during a week usually make a trip to a grocery store, and we think nothing of it. We think nothing of walking into a store and picking up the items that we need and being able to go to the register, which might be the hardest thing you have to do because the line might be long because of supplies and that sort of thing that we're experiencing, especially during this pandemic. But never would you think, as Senator Agberry said, that you would have to look over your shoulder going into the grocery store just to pick up items that you need. Those people affected, we saw images of people embracing each other. Our reporters and field crews told us about people embracing each other after such a horrific incident and witnessing what they've witnessed. We heard an eyewitness account, a woman coming face to face with the person, the gunman inside of that store. And with the new information that we've gotten from Brad in just moments, to hear that this is possibly an employee of the store, many of these people no doubtedly knew exactly who the gunman was if this is all confirmed true. So very, very, very devastating time for us here in Shelby County, a very sad time for us all. But we will get through this. We always do. And we will make sure that we can bring you the most accurate, the best information that we can in the hours to come.
Absolutely. That's definitely a key theme that we're hearing ringing time after time after time. Unity, resilience. We are all in this together. Rudy, thank you so much. We're going to send things back over to Brad Broders, who is live on the scene and has been live on the scene for several hours. You just gave us a significant update just a few moments ago.
Yeah, Yvonne, I just want to reiterate what Rudy just mentioned. You all are doing a great job continuing to keep us afloat and up to date. But let me just reiterate two key pieces of information I just found out in the last couple of minutes. First, a source within the Collierville Police Department tells us that the shooter was an employee at this Collierville Kroger who had recently been fired. A second significant update, we are now hearing from the one person other than the shooter who we know has died after this shooting. I'm going to read you a post from the son of that victim. I do not want to give the name out of privacy on air, as potentially other family members are learning about this. But let me just read a little bit about this Facebook post. Dear friends, it is with a heavy heart that I must inform you that my mother has died from her wounds. I spoke directly to the trauma surgeon. She was shot directly in the chest. EMTs attempted CPR at the hospital. They tried to save her, to no avail. I apologize for the graphic details, but this type of crime needs to stop being glossed over and sanitized. No one deserves this. We will continue to update family and friends with funeral arrangements in other news as it becomes available. He says, "I cannot believe I am typing this, but my mother was one of the victims today at the shooting in Collierville." We do not know right now if that victim was an employee at this Kroger or just a customer going about their afternoon at the grocery store. That will be finalized, we believe, in the next update. Less than an hour, we're expected to hear again from Collierville Police Chief Dale Lane. Chief Lane has worked in this community a long time, and if you're just joining us, I've never seen him as shaken up as he's been, as he was this afternoon in the immediate aftermath of this deadly active shooting situation. Chief Lane described this situation inside this Kroger earlier this afternoon as the most horrific ever in the town of Collierville. This is a community that doesn't deal with a lot of crime, much less a situation of this magnitude, an active shooting. This is a situation many of us here in the Memphis market, we might see in California or New York or Florida. But now this active shooting has come right here to our community. And tonight, as we go into the evening, a dozen families, 2 families who don't have a family member tonight, one of them being the shooter, according to police. This investigation is underway, but their long healing process will also be underway here in this community. And at the first news conference, Chief Dale Lane talked about the heroism of his officers as they ran into the store. Let's take a listen to that sound.
This is one of the most resilient communities in America, and one of the best police departments. I'm very thankful. I watched guys that ran into the front of that building, knowing that historically, not in this case, but historically, many of these shooters have very high-powered rifles, and not one of them hesitated going in that front door.
And that's significant from Chief Dale Lane of the Collierville Police Department. It was unclear at this time when they went in. The call came in at 1:30. First responders were going into this grocery store 4 minutes later. They didn't know, was there one shooter? Were there multiple shooters? What kind of weapon was involved at this situation? Tragically, as we know, I'm thinking about Aurora, Colorado, San Bernardino, Las Vegas. I mean, the cities go on and on. We can rattle them off in our head. Florida, at Stoneman Douglas High School back in 2018. Another active shooting here in Collierville, but like the others, you don't know. Is this person have a high volume capacity rifle that can unload hundreds of bullets within seconds? They didn't know that, but those officers ran into this Collierville Kroger and went aisle by aisle, working with those injured, treating those who had been shot, assisting those workers and customers who were hiding in freezers, in offices, trying to stay out of the potential sight line of that active shooter. So, again, this is just a lengthy investigation, but again, it's a lengthy healing process that this community is now embarking on. This is the latest community in the United States of America that is dealing with the aftermath of an active shooting where in this case, a dozen people are injured, multiple people are killed, and Collierville is now getting national attention for all the worst of reasons. It has come to our area, and we are dealing with that tonight, Yvonne.
Brad, thank you so much. Before we let you go, let's stay with these first responders for just a second. The bravery of those men and women who went inside of that store, today they needed that. The folks in that store needed that kind of safety, security, that heroism that they showed today, which is remarkable. We cannot understate that enough. Can you talk to us a little bit now and show us actually the scene? I'm sure there's still a lot of law enforcement there. Is it just as many as there were hours ago, or how is that looking right now?
It appears to be, Elvis, I'm going to take a step out of the shot right now. Why don't you push in a little bit right now? As you can see, Elvis right now, my photographer, he's pushing in on the Collierville Police Mobile Command Center. As you can see, I'm seeing Collierville police officers. I can still see Chief Dale Lane over there assisting others. I see the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. I also see, you can see the canopies are put up, and I think the canopies and the trailer over there with the other canopy, you know, you can tell that symbolizes that these law enforcement members are going to be here a lot of hours to come, presumably into the overnight hours, because as you can see, I saw someone bring pizzas earlier. They're going to be here a while because this investigation, as I mentioned, Yvonne, is really just in its infancy. Another key component I want to reiterate again is they believe they have the suspect's vehicle in this parking lot. So that will be another key component of this investigation, checking that car, were there any other weapons. And we're beginning to potentially get a clearer idea of some kind of motive, potentially. Again, we're going to have another update from law enforcement within an hour, probably about 6:30 or so, we've been told. But again, a source within the Collierville Police Department says that the shooter was an employee at this Kroger who had recently been fired. We are going to work, obviously, to confirm that and have additional details at this next update. Should be about 6:30, less than an hour away. But again, if you're just joining us, Chief Dale Lane of the Collierville Police Department said this is the most horrific day in this town of Collierville. That is the gravity that this community is dealing with. And also, I've noticed that just being here, a lot of onlookers have come just kind of be on the curb. We're kind of a little bit within the crime scene right now, respectfully, but it just gives you a sense of this is still a community with a lot of flashing lights right now. And this is going to be a lengthy process for this community, Yvonne.
Absolutely. People, I'm sure, are still trying to process exactly what happened and that it happened at their home, in their backyard. Brad, thank you so much for that report. And here are 3 things to know right now if you're just joining us. 12 people were injured. Another person was killed in this shooting. Police say the suspected shooter is also dead, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Regional 1 officials tell us that they have 9 patients from the shooting. 4 are in critical condition and 5 are in non-critical condition. And we have had team coverage all day on this story. Rebecca Butcher is also live. She spoke with an eyewitness. And Rebecca, can you tell us more about what this witness had to say?
Yeah, guys, as we were saying before, this is a very emotional day, a horrific day for the people who were involved, as well as the person who did lose their life. No word yet on that person's identity. But I can tell you, with speaking with witnesses here, they were doing all they could to cover one another, to protect one another in the midst of those gunshots ringing out inside of this Kroger here in Collierville behind me. It's located on New Byhalia Road. So one lady that you might have heard from earlier in our newscast, she next week will be her 33rd year working here at Kroger. She actually saw someone, she said, get shot in the head. Miraculously, though, that person was alert and urged her to call his mother. Another person, that was her coworker, but another person, she said, was a customer, actually got shot in the stomach. Now, she was actually at a register checking people out when she started hearing gunshots in the deli section, to where she said was in the front of the store. She immediately started running, telling people to come on, let's go, let's go. They run to the back of the store. The shooter, she says, comes behind them, and starts shooting. That's when those 2 people that I mentioned just a minute ago got shot. She says at one point the shooter left and then came back into the store. At that point, she just laid down and played dead. She said, you know, sometimes you hear people saying if you're near a bear or in a dangerous situation with a wild animal, play dead, they'll leave you alone. She said that was the case here for her, and it very well could have saved her life. I did mention earlier today, I want to talk about the resiliency around this Collierville community, this town. The law enforcement here and the police chief, Chief Lane, said he hadn't seen anything like this happen in his over 30 years in law enforcement. A horrifically historic event, this mass shooting here on New Byhalia Road. I did see 2 men comforting one another in prayer to get themselves through this tragedy. There was also a pastor who was on scene helping people out as well. We'll, of course, keep you updated and providing more stories later in our newscast tonight at 10. Reporting live in Collierville, I'm Rebecca Butcher.
Rebecca, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Viewer Tony Sawyer posted this video to Facebook, arrived at the shopping center just as people were running out of the Kroger. You can see a man being treated for his injuries at the scene. Sawyer told us that he learned of the shooting from two women who had just made it out of the store. Wow.
They thought they heard a pop, and when they heard the pop, they thought it was just simply a balloon going off. Everybody, I think, in the place thought there was balloons going off. Nobody thought this. Nobody was prepared for this. Nobody was, hyper vigilant in this situation. They moved casually, and it wasn't until the second round of pops that everybody really get out of there and really get to moving. But the first time, everybody just heard the pop and thought it was just simply a balloon going off.
We are continuing to hear and see more emotional sound and video of just what happened and unfolded today. And we're continuing our team coverage here in Memphis at Regional 1 Hospital in the Medical District. That's where Caitlin McCarthy is, where several of the victims from the shooting in Collierville were sent. Caitlin, what have you learned about the victims so far?
Well, Yvonne, we're still learning more about the victims, but we do know Regional 1 has received 9 of them, and they're making sure that they're all hands on deck to make sure in this emergency response that everyone is properly triaged and taken care of. Earlier today, there were nearly a dozen ambulances from several Shelby County area first responders helping bring the victims here, on top of dozens of Memphis police officers here to make sure the scene was secured. Now, right now, you can just take a look. It's much quieter than it was just a couple of hours ago. The street was actually blocked off in front of the trauma center to make sure the ambulances and first responders and police could properly get the victims here. Regional 1 has enacted their surge plan and were able to accommodate everyone in the trauma center, which means the trauma center is ready to take an influx of patients from an emergency such as a mass shooting like this one, so everyone can be triaged and taken care of. And we're staying in touch with Regional 1 to see how the victims are doing. And again, our thoughts and prayers are with these victims and everyone who knows them. Yvonne, back to you.
Before I let you go, we were seeing a heavy police force that was outside of the hospital. Have you seen a lot of people, just general people, maybe family, just coming in and out of the hospital at this time?
Well, Yvonne, earlier today, we saw several people waiting outside the trauma center and ER. We weren't able to speak with them, but we imagine that they were waiting on news of any of the victims that were being brought here. Right now, it's much more quiet. There was a heavy Memphis Police Department presence here, but again, it has since cleared out in the last couple hours, but we'll be here throughout the evening to see if anything does change.
Caitlin, thank you so much. Definitely praying for everyone that's inside of that facility right now. We're going to send things over to anchor Rudy Williams, who's been keeping up with a lot of statements and support that we've been receiving from local and state leaders. Yeah, we're going to get to some of those statements from our two local mayors, Yvonne, but we also want to make note at this time that Regional 1 is known as one of the best trauma centers in the country. So we're grateful to have that, unfortunately, to deal with this sort of situation that we're facing today. But as we talk about what we have here in Memphis, Tennessee, our county mayor and our city mayor have responded to the events of today. Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris issued this statement saying, "Our hearts go out to the victims and families of those affected by today's mass shooting in the town of Collierville. We must embrace the residents of our community as we all sort through this tragedy. We must also work together to prevent these ongoing senseless acts of violence." And also, Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland issued this statement that read, "Our hearts go out to our neighbors in Collierville who are facing the pain of this tragic event in their community. I want to thank our police and fire departments who answered the call to assist. We pray for the victims and their families." And Congressman Steve Cohen of Memphis issued this statement. He says the shooting in Collierville today is another horrific incident caused by someone who undoubtedly had a mental health issue and a firearm. That is a deadly combination. My thoughts are with the victims and their families and with all in Collierville and the greater Memphis community. Senator Romesh Akbari issued this statement on the shooting. She says, "My heart aches for our families who are caught in yet another act of senseless gun violence. My family is praying for these victims and their caregivers, but it's going to take collective action from us all to heal the scars of this tragedy moving forward. No one should have to watch over their shoulder at work or picking up groceries. This cannot be the cost of living in a free society."
Then there's Senator Marsha Blackburn. On Twitter, she says our office has been in contact with ATF, TBI, and local authorities on the ground, and we are closely monitoring the situation in Collierville. We are praying for all of the victims there. So, Yvonne, we are steadily seeing outpours of support for the community of Collierville as we are all connected here in this area. And we will continue to see more information coming in that will give us a better idea of what actually happened there as we have crews that are so able out in Collierville to bring us that information as we get it.
Rudy, absolutely. Can we sit here just for a minute and just really talk about what has happened today? A lot of us are still processing this. It's a heavy and heartbreaking day to just think people just went to the grocery store to do their regular weekly shopping, and this is what happened.
The scene in several communities across the country. And no doubtedly, after we get through this initial shock and trauma of the events, we will begin to once again enter a place that we've entered before in this country, talking about gun rights and gun laws and things of that nature, but also probably more importantly here, as one of our elected officials mentioned in their comments, mental health wellness for all of us. No doubtedly, all of us have experienced some sort of trauma, some sort of change and difference in our lives during this pandemic that we've lived through over the course of a year or more now. So in talking about that, we can't skip over or gloss over the fact that first responders who ran into this grocery store today were also the same people who were helping us through that very difficult and challenging time of the pandemic. So there are lots of things that are happening for all of us here at this point in time. But even through all of this, as we've seen before, as we've seen on social media and other ways, people are reaching out to help and to be a support for the community of Collierville and for our area in general. The scene there, as we've seen from our crews there, is calming down, but the pain and the hurt of what has been experienced today will definitely continue. It will continue to go on, and we will have other stories that will come forward and other people that will come forward about what they saw. Some very scary moments. I could not imagine being in that situation around 1:30 today in Collierville in that Kroger store.
Yeah, I couldn't either. And really, there is an underlying theme of this day, as devastating as this is that this community is resilient, that there is unity here. People are coming together, and I hope to continue to see that in the days and the weeks to come as we piece everything together, as we wait for investigators to give us more information about what happened, that healing comes from this.
That's right. And we certainly hope that help comes before we find ourselves in situations like this that we're seeing right now. It's better to deal with things on the front end, of course, as always, and on the back end in most cases.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Rudy, talk to me a little bit about this community in general. You know, I'm still pretty new to the area. I've been ushered in very warmingly, but you've been here for a while.
Yeah, well, you come with the right spirit, Yvonne. You come with the spirit of concern and care for this community because we all have some sorts of connections some way or another. And you know, one of the important things that we've seen here today through this situation is that we've seen all sorts of accounts and speculations that happen through social media. That's a new element that we have to deal with in this sort of thing, and especially in such a small community. And everyone is connected some way or another. So as we look at social media, we'll hear accounts, or we'll hear some ideas of what may have happened in that situation. Well, the good thing about that is that we have investigators that are looking into the situation and talking to people that are there, looking at surveillance video, and collecting all sorts of investigative information that will help to flesh all of this out. And then the other good part about that is that we're here to help give you the accurate information as it comes to us. So you can count on us to definitely do that for you. And you can also count on us to bring you the stories unadulterated, with a very caring hand and manner of the people that were involved in their families. This is something that affects us all.
Absolutely. And we do care, and we're here. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a few minutes at 6. Stay with us.
And he kept on shooting, shooting, shooting.
Gunfire in the grocery store.
I've been involved in this for 34 years and I've never seen anything like it.
New tonight, stories of heroism. First responders running towards the danger.
Not one of them hesitated going in that front door.
And the heartbreaking realization our community has joined a distressing list, mass shooting sites.
On a day like today, it's very easy to see that there's a lot of evil in the world.
Breaking news is first on Local 24 News.
We are staying on top of this breaking news of a shooting that took place at a Collierville Kroger. Take a look at this map of where the Kroger is located on New Byhalia Road and Poplar Avenue. Here's what we know right now. 13 people were injured, 2 are dead, including the shooter. This is video from the scene that we gathered earlier today. Now, what we can tell you again is from dispatch, what we've learned from Chief Dale Lane was that this happened at about 1:30 this afternoon is when dispatch got the call about everything that was unfolding inside of this Kroger. Police arrived within 4 minutes and they found a chaotic scene inside, a horrific scene, as police have described it inside. Again, 13 victims, 2 dead, including the shooter. There's still a lot of questions about exactly the motive of the shooter. We don't know that just yet. We also don't know what kind of weapon the shooter had. We're also still working to learn about whether or not the shooter was an employee of Kroger or if this was someone who just walked in. We're still waiting and standing by on a press conference that we, of course, will bring to you live in its entirety. Right now, our Brad Broders is live at that Kroger in Collierville, where he's been for several hours, with another update for us.
Yvonne, I want to bring you some breaking news. Another layer of confirmation. A source from Collierville Police confirms that the active shooter involved in this situation earlier today was a former employee at the Kroger, fired this morning from the store. That is according to a source within the Collierville Police Department. We're also learning more information on social media about one of the other person who died. We know 2 people have died. According to police, the shooter who took his own life, as well as 1 other victim. I'm not going to give away the name right now out of respect for the family. They may still be learning this information. But a friend of that victim posted on social media, "Please pray for my dear friend and her amazing sons and family. I will miss her terribly. Pray for our town and all of our first responders. Many, many years of training was put to the test today, and they did a remarkable job. It could have been so much worse." And that is a common thread of what we're dealing with today. Chief Dale Lane talking about the heroism of his officers running into this Collierville Kroger 4 minutes after getting that call, not knowing what they were encountering inside the store, seeing people shot on the floor, seeing people hiding in offices and freezers for safety as this active shooter went through the store. Again, we're going to have a news conference in about 7 minutes at 6:10. We should get more information on that as we're continuing to follow what's an ongoing investigation in its infancy. And here is the chief talking about his officer's heroism earlier today.
This is one of the most resilient communities in America and one of the best police departments. I'm very thankful. I watched guys that ran into the front of that building knowing that historically, not in this case, but historically, many of these shooters have very high-powered rifles, and not one of them hesitated going in that front door.
And if you're just joining us, I have to reiterate, Chief Dale Lane of the Collierville Police Department saying today this active shooting situation, which injured a dozen people, claimed the lives of 2 others, as the most horrific ever in this town of Collierville, a Memphis suburb that is now the latest in the United States of America to be dealt with the significant emotional blow of an active shooting which injured citizens, killed others, and now a lengthy investigation begins. A lengthy healing process for the Memphis area also begins. Many questions to be sorted through in the hours and days ahead. If I can see behind me, there's canopies and tents set up. Investigators are going to be here a lot of the night into the overnight as they just are getting to the surface of what's expected to be a lengthy investigation. Yvonne?
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Before we let you go, I do want to talk to you just a little bit. We cannot understate how powerful these first responders really were in this moment today for this community, men and women springing into action when folks needed them the most. How are they feeling right now? Can you sense a mood from them on the scene?
I could, Yvonne. Earlier, I was observing how they were handling this, and they were shaken up. I mean, this was the immediate aftermath. We arrived on scene probably no more than an hour after the situation unfolded here, and so we are dealing with just the horrific aftermath of this situation and what was going on, and you could sense they were rattled. This is a situation that no police department ever expects that they're going to encounter. But here we are in Collierville, Tennessee. This police department is now the latest police department to investigate and deal with the emotional aftermath, the emotional toll of an active shooting. We know the cities in recent years: Aurora, Colorado, Las Vegas, Nevada, San Bernardino, California, Marjorie Douglas High School in Florida, and now Collierville's getting national attention for all the worst of reasons. But out of that devastation, this community and this law enforcement family are bonding together, Yvonne.
Thank you so much for that update. All right, moving forward, of course, we're seeing a lot of things on social media right now, and a lot of you are sending us some video as well. Viewer Tony Sawar posted this video to Facebook arriving at the shopping center just as people were running out of the Kroger. You can see a man being treated for his injuries at the scene. Sawar told us that he learned of the shooting from two women who had just made it out of the store.
They thought they heard a pop, and when they heard the pop, they thought it was just simply a balloon going off. Everybody, I think, in the place thought there was balloons going off. Nobody thought this. Nobody was prepared for this. Nobody was, hyper vigilant in this situation. They moved casually, and it wasn't until the second round of pops that everybody really get out of there and really get to moving. But the first time, everybody just heard the pop and thought it was just simply a balloon going off.
Nobody thought this. Nobody prepared for this, he says. And we're also told that police and investigators found people all over that Kroger, even some of them hiding in a freezer. Definitely a devastating, hard, heavy day. And we're with you to help navigate everything that we know about what's happened today and what will happen in the next few weeks. We continue our team coverage here in Memphis at Regional 1 Hospital in the medical district. Caitlin McCarthy is there where several victims of the shooting in Collierville were sent. Caitlin, what can you tell us?
Well, Yvonne, Regional 1 has confirmed with me that they've received 9 of the victims. As of right now, 4 are in critical condition and 5 are in non-critical condition. But Yvonne, I can tell you it was devastating today seeing ambulance after ambulance racing into Regional 1 today to help many of these victims. There were nearly a dozen ambulances and first responders from several Shelby area agencies helping these victims, and nearly a dozen, if not dozens, of Memphis police cars here to assist and secure the scene. The street here, Jefferson, in front of the trauma center was closed off to make sure the ambulances and first responders and police could safely get the victims to the trauma center. We do know that the Collierville Police Department says the number of victims is likely to change, and they will keep us updated on that. Regional 1 hasn't acted their search plan, and they were able to accommodate everyone in the trauma center, which means the trauma center is ready to take an influx of patients from an emergency such as a mass shooting like this to make sure everyone is triaged and taken care of properly. Yvonne?
Caitlin, thank you so much for that. Before we let you go, we do want to talk to you just a second. Rudy brought up a really good point today of just the value of having that trauma center here, that they are prepared when things like this happen.
Absolutely, Yvonne, and we can see that there were several employees out here today making sure that the victims safely got into the trauma center and were properly taken care of. Several employees from the hospital were out here today making sure that people were okay, checking in, seeing what was going on. And we haven't confirmed, but many of the loved ones of the victims were outside the hospital today just trying to find information about what's going on with their loved one to make sure they are okay.
Caitlin, thank you so much for keeping us updated. And we're going to continue our coverage in Collierville, where Rebecca Butcher is also live. She spoke with several witnesses. Rebecca, talk to us a little bit more about the emotional sound that you've been hearing today.
Yeah, Yvonne, good evening. Well, I can tell you it is an emotional scene, a horrific tragedy that happened here in Kroger, in Collierville at this Kroger on New Byhalia Road. One woman in particular stuck out to us. She was at the cash register just checking people out, has been working here for over 30 years when she heard gunshots popping off near the deli, she says, near the front of the Kroger, of the business. She gathered some people around her. They started running towards the back of this Kroger. She says that the gunman came behind them. She actually saw someone get shot in the head. Thankfully, miraculously, that person did not lose his life. He was alert, she says, and urged them to call his mother. Another person, she said, was a customer. That person was shot in the stomach. She also believes one person might have been grazed in the back area as well. But what she said that really stuck out to me was that God got us. She was a little shaky, but she knew this was all in God's hands. So people are relying on their faith, one another. This is the community in Collierville, a town that has a lot of churches, strong faith community. The law enforcement said this is a resilient town and that they will get through this. Of course, you might be seeing this on national headlines as well, but we want to make sure that we're here for the people who are going through this right now, the loved ones of the victims as well as the family members. So we will continue to carry this story throughout the night at 9 on CW and also at 10 o'clock. But we want you guys to know that our thoughts and our prayers are with the victims. Reporting live in Collierville, I'm Rebecca Butcher.
Rebecca, thank you so much. Rudy Williams is here with us in studio with a look at how our local leaders are reacting to this tragedy today.
Yeah, Yvonne, as you can imagine, lots of our leadership in our counties. All right, we're going to go back to Brad for that press conference with law enforcement.
Okay, thanks.
Clear.
We're clear. I saw them, like, Brad and Elvis just sprinted across the street, and they're doing some kind of protest now.
Okay.
You weren't going to listen to that?
Yeah.
And then all finished
Through the Collierville Police Department, our mayor, our board of aldermen, I will be speaking on their behalf. We don't want to confuse, and I definitely don't want to create any additional fear in the community. Right now, there are no known additional threats to the community. Right now, we're working a crime scene, very significant one, several, tens of thousands of square feet crime scene. I'm very thankful. Today, there was a lot of good things that came that I really believe prevented this tragedy from being much worse. And I don't want to take away from what's occurred. My thoughts and prayers, and I hope yours are too, are going to be with the victims, everybody that's impacted. A lot of people were impacted by this. So I'm thankful. As you can see, there's we have many partners that come to help us today, and I'm so thankful for them. Pretty much every city in this county, we've got the Memphis Police Department, Shelby County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, TBI, ATF, you name it, they came. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Something else, I was talking to our team, one of the things that I saw as I entered that building today, the training that's gone on in this community and across this country for years saved people's lives today. How many of you have heard of Run, Hide, Fight? That's exactly what those people today did. We had 44 employees that were inside at the time this started, and we've accounted for everyone. Now, we still have the same number of victims as we did at the previous one, with the addition of one. We had one walk-in to one of our local hospitals, and it wasn't a shooting victim. It was an anxiety attack. So this situation is going to drive fear, but we are a resilient community, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we keep Collierville and this area as safe as we can. And right now I'm going to ask Special Agent in charge of the local FBI, Doug Korneski, if he would come and just give some brief comments. We also have Teresa Dickerson from Kroger, the Public Information Officer, who's going to provide some information, and then we'll open it up for some quick questions. So, Doug, if you will.
Thank you, Chief Lane.
So could you say and spell your first last name?
Sure, it's Douglas Korneski, Korneski. So first, I just want to start by expressing our condolences, and again, our prayers are with the community. Many of us live in this community, shop in this store, so we deeply feel the loss and emotions here today. want to mention that the reason we're here supporting Collierville PD. I want to give absolute kudos to the response of the police department, Shelby County Sheriffs, the fire department. Their rapid response here today was definitely commendable. Under the authorities of the Investigative Assistance for Violent Crimes Act of 2012, the FBI is allowed to provide, at the request of local law enforcement, investigative assistance. So what we're doing here today, we've deployed our evidence response team, which has a lot of experience in processing these scenes. They're here, they're inside the store, they're processing the evidence. Additionally, we have our victim specialists who have come and will be providing and have been providing assistance to the victims of the crime. And then we'll be assisting with other investigative interviews and things of that nature. So it's a great team effort. Just always in the site of tragedy, it's good to see the Memphis and Collierville, West Tennessee law enforcement communities pull together, as we always do when tragedy strikes.
Thank you, everyone. Teresa Dickerson, and I'm the Corporate Affairs Manager for Kroger Delta Division. I'd like to just say every Kroger associate here in this city, in the Mid-South, we stand with our team here at the Collierville store. Actually, every associate throughout the country. We are praying for our associates here in Collierville, and we're asking the community to please pray for us as we go through this difficult time. We're saddened and heartbroken by what happened here today. It is an emotional roller coaster, as you can imagine. And we, of course, have provided counseling for every associate who's here today. And we will continue to do that. We'll also close the store. It will remain closed until further notice. Again, this is a tragic incident, and we are saddened by it. Please pray for our family, our Kroger family, the family of the victims, and we're asking today that you will, for the integrity of this investigation, please direct all questions to the Collierville Police Department. And we just want to say thank you to the police department, to the first responders who were rushing in as people were rushing out. If you can imagine that, then you also pray for our first responders who came out today to help us during this tragic incident. Thank you.
Ma'am? Very little. Right now, he's deceased. We're still continuing the investigation. It's ongoing. There's search warrants that are going to be carried out shortly. At different locations, or at one in particular. Can't give that out, so I know that's the next question. But we're going to carry this thing as far as we can to see and make sure that there's no one else involved.
Chief, did you talk about the truck in front of the store? I know your bomb unit has been there. As a matter of fact, I think they're right now.
Right.
Did you talk about what you're looking for?
Well, that's pretty standard in these types of situations. We want to check and make sure, we know from our past experience, or I say past experience, my past knowledge of these incidents around the country. There have been times where there have been booby traps and things like that that's been associated with these, so it's out of abundance of caution. We have the resources here. We have some of the finest specialized resources in this part of the country, and they've been here for a long time preparing for terrorist type attacks. In this case, we don't believe that's involved here, but it's early in the investigation and we're continuing on, but it's just making sure that any contact, that we keep this community safe.
Chief, what about this train?
How many were customers, how many were employees?
I don't have that information right now. We'll try to get that for you tomorrow.
Do you know their status? Do you know their conditions?
Right now it's still the same. I know that we had one in surgery and another in ICU, and so y'all continue to pray. We don't want there to be any more loss of life.
Chief, what about this gunshots? Because there's a chance that someone might have tripped, fell, any other injuries. Were they all gunshots?
I don't have any information to support that. Yes, sir, Brad.
Chief, what about the training that you all have dealt with in active shooting investigation, without getting away specific tactics, but what helped your officers today potentially have something worse happen?
It hasn't been 3 months. The Collierville Police Department hosted a multi-agency active shooter training scenario with our law enforcement partners, fire, and I'm very thankful that we did. It's a whole lot easier to go through. You make your mistakes there. Today, what the result was victims were able to get medical treatment much faster because of the integration between police and fire. And our partners come in. Everyone knew. Very proud of our police officers. I think, and thank you for saying that, Teresa. You know, it's one thing to see it on the news, but it's another thing when you're having to go in and know that there's a potential person armed on that other side, and there was not one person. It didn't. That building was flooded with blue uniforms, and I'm very thankful for them. That's part of the investigation. We're not going to get into that now. Ma'am? It's part of the investigation. So you're talking about the shooter? I do not know. I don't have that information. We'll try to get that for you before tomorrow.
Were any officers accountable for the employees? Provide that number again.
44.
44. And how many people total were in the store?
We don't have that information at this time. What we've done is we deployed multiple teams, not only searching the inside of the facility, but all the surrounding areas to make sure that we didn't have anybody that was injured that ran out. So we feel very confident that we've everybody that was involved, that we have a good handle on that now.
Chief, what are you looking for inside the store tonight, and how long will this remain a crisis?
Well, as long as it takes to get it done right. You know, that's the thing. We don't want to take a shortcut, so we're going to take our time. We've got very good partners that are here with us, and we're going to go through and make sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's, so I can't give you that.
We know a bomb squad was looking at a car. Can you say what was discovered or not discovered here?
Nothing's been discovered at this point.
Chief, can you just clarify the shooter was
Ma'am? I can't comment on that right now. No, as far as we know, there wasn't any other incident that led up to this at this point.
Were any officers hurt?
No officers were hurt.
Chief Lane, what's next for the emotional toll that's taken on your officers? It's not every day a police department deals with an active shooting. How's your department doing? What's next for you all after this afternoon?
Right now, our primary concern was scene stabilization and making sure that we get the victims the medical help, but there will be a time where we'll do critical stress debriefings with our officers. There'll be officers that involved in similar situations come from across the state that we'll talk about it, and so what did we do right? Is there things that we can do better and those kinds of things? I don't know if you noticed, but we had chaplains here. We graduated 9 chaplains 2 weeks ago, and we had 3 chaplains on the scene here offering their services. I'm very thankful that they were here.
Can you say what type of weapon was used?
Nope.
Did you say how many?
No, ma'am. That's part of the investigation. So what we don't want to do is, I know you want that information, and we want to give it to you. We're not. What we have to make sure is that there's no one else involved in this, and the more information we release, the more we compromise potential investigation going forward. So we're going to get you the information eventually, but right now, please bear with me.
You'll have time.
Kroger also has security.
I'm not sure. You want to answer that question?
Ms. Dickerson, did the Kroger have security at the time?
So we'll give you that information as soon as it's available. I'll get with him and he can provide another update.
Chief, was there a time when you thought there was a second shooter?
We have to go into it anticipating that that's the potential for it, but there was no credible evidence that there was a second shooter. Most of our first-hand witnesses pointed to one. I know there was some reports that I think we talked about in the first briefing where there was an individual on the roof. I can personally tell you that was a Kroger employee because I was part of getting him off. So that was definitely a Kroger employee.
Chief, I know this has been asked, but I'm getting a lot of questions from the report on the other side with the checking of that vehicle. Something was removed. Is any other updates about what's happening? It's not clear yet.
Well, we're not going to release what's been removed from that vehicle, okay? If there's something, I wasn't aware of that. I'm sure there's somebody that's got eyes on it. I'm kind of staying back, and we're trying to let our professionals do their job. So, but 2 more questions.
Can you go through the timeline of this one more time, please?
Okay, we told you at the last briefing that the first call came out at 1:30. The first car that the dispatch has on the scene is 4 minutes later. I have since found out that as that call was going out, Collierville PD did have a car that was on the scene, so our response was almost immediate. Some people don't get on the radio. You know, it's a high-stress situation, and they've been trained, you go towards the threat, and that's what they were doing.
Any children who were injured?
Not that I've been told at this point.
Will we have another briefing tonight?
Probably not tonight. If we get any significant developments through the ongoing investigation, Major David Townsend will reach out to you guys and we'll organize a press conference. If not, we'll have one sometime early in the morning to brief everybody up. Okay? Anything else? All right.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Thanks, Chief.
That was Police Chief Dale Lane wrapping up the latest information that we know so far. Rudy and I want to walk you through a couple of things. Rudy, one of the things I want to talk about definitely is that there are no known additional threats. That's one of the big points that he made. He also mentioned that they are preparing search warrants at this time, and they also want to make sure that no one else was involved in this incident.
Yeah, absolutely. He talked about the size and the scope of that crime scene, not just inside of the store and not just inside of the parking lot. He also talked about searching around the perimeter of that store. And you're looking at a map right there. That's exactly where it is at New Byhelia Road in Collierville. And that is a heavily traversed area, especially during the time of day that this shooting took place and the first call came in and the first cars arrived on the scene there. You know, Yvonne, one of the other interesting points that Chief made just a moment ago, he said training played a big part in making sure that this would not be any worse than what it was. He mentioned the run, hide, fight method that lots of us have heard in terms of the training that we received over the last several years, making this this already tragic situation not so bad. We're going to toss back out to Brad out on the scene now.
And Yvonne, I just want to reiterate some of those other points you definitely highlighted the highlights of many of what he also said. Dale Lane, also the chief of Collierville Police, also wanted to note that no children were injured today and no Collierville police officers. Chief Lane said 44 members of his department went into that store showing heroism just minutes after the first reports of that active shooter. They came in different waves into that store, not knowing if there was one shooter, two shooters, how many shooters may have still been shooting. Shows you the heroism that they answered the call in the middle of the afternoon, an active shooting in Collierville, Tennessee, and these first responders went into that store and helped the victims, they helped customers, and they helped employees of that Kroger. Now, I wanted to reiterate, within the last hour, I did tell you in some of my previous live hits that according to a source within the Collierville Police Department, the shooter was an employee who was fired this morning. Now, just now, Chief Dale Lane did not confirm that, but a source within the Collierville Police Department tells ABC 24 that the employee was fired this morning, and that was the active shooter. We can also report that there are no active scenes of concern right now. Oftentimes in active shootings, even if the shooter is dead, they're still concerned about potential booby traps, explosive devices. The FBI has assisted Collierville police scoping through this parking lot to make sure there are no other potential trouble signs. This parking lot is clear. We do know that this store will be closed for the foreseeable future, according to a Kroger spokesperson, Teresa Dickerson, you just heard from a couple of minutes ago. Teresa Dickerson, clearly emotional, discussing the emotional day this has taken on Kroger associates, several injured, several just dealing with the emotional aftermath of this case. So we are going to continue to monitor this, but again, no injured Collierville police officers and no injured children among those injured earlier this afternoon. Yvonne and Rudy.
Brad, thank you so much. We really appreciate that update. He's been live on the scene all day. Another thing that I did want to mention as well, Rudy, is that this was pretty important. They had mentioned earlier that they had several different scenes that they were working, one of which was the shooter's car that was in the parking lot. And they mentioned that there had been nothing discovered in this car.
Yeah, exactly. As Brad was telling us and making note of from the final words of Chief Dale Lane out there as well. I want to also make this point. We do understand that the mayor of Collierville is on his way. Stan Joyner is on a plane headed back to the area, was away and learned of this much like many of us did this evening. So he is coming back to see about Collierville. But also want to note in that last press conference that we just saw, we saw police officers, law enforcement from all around. So as we've read statements from our elected officials and other communities around the area, they are not just supporting Collierville with words, they are supporting Collierville with actions, and a lot more to learn in this very tragic situation today, Yvonne.
Rudy, absolutely. And we are there with you and for you to help you navigate this situation as we all go through this. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Of course, continue to stay with us both on air, online, and on social media as we learn more about the events that happened today and what will happen in the days and the weeks to come. Thank you so much.